Welcome to the Live Up podcast, where we revisit, review, and score the movies from our youth to see if they live up. So I'm Jess Latterman, and before we get started, just quick fun announcements. So we've launched a blog at liveuppod.com. It's our extra little tidbits from the episode, overviews, but also some other fun things from the movies we love. So come check us out, liveuppod.com. At liveuppod is also all our socials. So yada, yada, yada. Let's get into it.
Ooh, that was a fun announcement. We have a website. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Treat. Today we are reviewing Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, a movie so good, it'll melt your face off. We're prepared to watch this. Jess, I know you and I kind of discussed some concerns we had about whether this would live up or not. I don't
know.
Getting ready for this episode, I saw some articles where actual archaeologists were calling this movie very imperialistic and sexist, and that Indiana Jones is really just stealing antiquities that he's probably going to sell to the British Museum or something.
I mean, he kind of is.
And it's always stuck out with me, the whole age thing with him and Marion Ravenwood is a little creepy. So there was some known problems going into this, but that was just my memory. Jess, do you remember what your concerns were about whether this movie would live up or not?
Yeah, so I didn't remember the Marion age thing, which we will get to that. I love the franchise. I get confused between what was Raiders of the Lost Ark and what was The Last Crusade. They were both sort of meshed in my mind. Everything was a little fuzzy for me. So I guess I'd say expectations, like on the one hand, I knew that there were outrageously dated parts. And then on the other, though, you have like peak Harrison Ford time for 1981. And I will say for my kids who were like tired at the time when we were going to watch the movie, I basically billed it to them as, well, Han Solo is in this movie. I think you'll like it. And as soon as they knew that Han Solo was in it, they were excited to watch it. But
so are they're old school Han Solo fans, like the first 3 Star Wars?
They are.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I guess especially my daughter, because she's being a little older, but yeah, they know who he is. And even my son, like, like 30 seconds into the movie, he's like, Mama, that's Han Solo. It's like, it just clicked in for him.
Nice.
But you know, I have a small feeling, Amanda, you and I might diverge in terms of our opinions here. But
we shall see.
We shall see. So you picked this one. So why'd you pick it?
Well, 2 reasons. First, there is another Indiana Jones movie coming at us, I think this summer.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Indiana Jones and the thermostat dial of the assisted living community, or it's something like that. I forget the name of it. There's a dial. And I don't know how I feel about that, because Harrison Ford is in his 80s now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's kind of old.
I don't want this to be like the Beach Boys concert I went to a couple of years ago, where they were doing all the great hits, but they were also like very decrepitly old on stage and like barely moving, and just, oh my God, it was kind of like never meet your heroes. It should be like never go watch your heroes when they're in their 80s, because they don't have the moves like they used to, and it just makes you feel sad. And
yeah,
I don't know. So I'm very hesitant about this 5th movie, and I'm also concerned that I have not seen Karen Allen's name in any promotion for this film. If they have killed off Marion Ravenwood from the Indiana Jones franchise, I will be pissed. So somebody call the producers and find out if they have killed her off, and if they have, I want reshoots. Bring her back. I know Karen Allen, she's still out in Western Massachusetts teaching, I think, at Bard College.
Oh, really?
So come get her.
That's a fun fact.
Oh yeah, she's I think a drama teacher out there.
That's awesome. There's a little bit like, should Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones just stay in your memory from 40 years ago? However long.
And then the second reason we're watching this is because we're reviewing Indiana Jones leading up to the 2023 Oscars, where I think all of us are totally rooting for Jonathan Ke Huy Quan to win a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And if you recall, he played Short Round in Temple of Doom. Kind of cheering for him by watching an Indiana Jones movie. That said, we did not want to watch Temple of Doom because
Yeah,
that's the
not
worst
interested.
one.
And we'll know whether he won the Oscar by the time we actually publish this episode. But you heard it here first for predictions, I guess.
Yes, we're cheering him on because he was so good in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So anyway, those are the two reasons we chose to watch Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark for this episode. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, Jess, would you care to give a recap of this movie?
Sure. I mean, it's like a slightly editorialized recap. So for those who don't remember or get the movies mixed up like I did between the franchise. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, it came out in 1981, but it's set in 1936. And it's about an archaeologist, Indiana Jones, who uses his sabbatical time to casually murder people on his way to dabbling in the antiquities black market. And for this particular story in the franchise, it seems both the US government and like this vague British museum entity kind of jointly send Indiana Jones on this mission to find the Ark of the Covenant. And with the Ark of the Covenant people, which are two stone tablets that God gave Moses with the 10 commandments on them. So the Nazis at this time really want them for all those legends of power and all that comes with that. And, obviously the US government does not want the Nazis to have it. So that's the general premise, and underline the casually murder part of that sentence. and there's also this vague British museum. They're just these throwaway lines like, well, of course, we'll buy it from you as usual, assuming Indiana Jones gets this antiquity from God and they'll buy it. And it's just, well, they'd probably buy it from the Nazis too if they really wanted it. Like there's a little bit of that. But you seem to be a little bit more okay with all this, Amanda. So, what were your initial thoughts?
My memory of this was like the adventure. We're running through the jungle. There's mountains. There's like, we're flying all over the world, and the plane leaves little red dots on the map.
Yeah, they travel by map, which is super fun.
That is super fun. Yeah, no, this movie in my memory was super fun. And the things I did not remember, it was just way more violent than my memory had. Even if I thought really hard about it and be like, oh yeah, when they run through like various like Incan temples, there's, spears coming out of the wall and impaling people. It's like, okay, that's happening. Or like there's fights with the Nazis, and I definitely remembered that really big guy, they're in a punching match.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then the propeller just takes him out, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then like the iconic one, of course, is when they're in the marketplace and there's a guy who's an incredible swordsman. He's about to kill Indy and he's doing all his moves, and Indy just pulls out the gun and shoots him. So in my head, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's like, some like fighting and violence, but like funny, but like, no, the body count in this movie is so high. And it's not just Indiana, it's Marion kills a ton of people too. And
they're like mowing people down, man. Like it's,
oh God.
I vaguely remember that from being a kid, that the body count, that it's violent, Nazis, whatever. I just didn't remember how much.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's not Adam's Family, like, oh, we imply someone died here and we don't show it. Like,
right.
They fight, and there's that fight that happens in Nepal where he goes to find Marion, and like it's not even a bar brawl, it's like a bar massacre that occurs.
It's like a bar massacre.
Yeah, and it's not just like, oh, punch, punch, shoot, shoot kind of thing. He's shooting people in the eyes, and they're holding the camera on the face as like the blood drips out of these guys' eyes. Like, it's so gross.
Yeah.
So once again, I love the special effects work with all the blood and the fire and the crazy going on, but this is a violent movie.
Yeah, I was actually, let me declench my fist from my pearls for just a second to say, like, I was a little surprised that it was PG. I was like, what the hell? Like,
I don't think they had PG-13 when this came out. I think this was a pre-PG-13 movie.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
I I forget what year it was that they changed it.
I mean, kids, generally speaking, I think are just not affected as much by violence in films. They just aren't. I kind of think this is a little bit adult sensibility now, rewatching it versus
Going,
like
whoa,
I think
wait, the hero just
yeah,
shot some guy's eyes out.
some guy's eyes out and like they're mowing people down. And in some ways, maybe in 1981 that was okay because they're Nazis and there's like a general awareness of Nazis. I mean, my daughter who's 11 knows who the Nazi, like she knows that basic history, but my son was like, we had to kind of explain who Hitler was to him.
The worst person in history.
Right. So my son's introduction to like Hitler and the Nazis are Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well,
Not bad.
gives you a strong sense of they're very bad.
I'll yeah, I kind of did struggle with the violence a little bit on this one because it was a little bit violent with no purpose. And I think that bugged me now as an adult watching it. And so at first I didn't mind, but as they went on and the market scene that you described with shooting the guy with the swordsman, but then afterwards there's basically a massacre in the marketplace in this market in Cairo. I think they're in Cairo
Mhm.
at this point. Then, Indiana Jones is like literally just sitting by a bar and getting drunk, and the market just goes on, and nobody gives a shit that he just
Yeah.
massacred these people. There was just no point to it. And then the Germans just walk up to him to talk to him in the bar while he's drunk. It made the whole like choreography of the action scene just feel totally unnecessary to me. So, it made me cringe a little bit. And we're not people who care about watching, or at least I'm not, my wife feels differently about PG-13 or R. Like we watch Star Wars, like we watch things with adult themes. I watch Squid Games, which is like totally disgustingly violent.
Kids, right?
Not with the kids. No, no, no. I don't watch Squid, but I do. But yet, for some reason, the good guys mowing people down, it just sort of, I hit my limit with the violence a little bit in this movie.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. My daughter too, a little bit. Like by the end, she was like, "Okay, enough with."
Do you guys wear matching pearls to clutch?
I know,
It's so violent.
I know. But my son though did not give a shit. I mean, he like
Hey.
he loved it. He loved it. He didn't care about the blood. He thought it was fun. So yeah. So I'm gonna just now relax my fingers and rip
Okay.
off the pearls for the rest of this episode.
Okay, so I have to confess, I need to
Tell me your
confess
bias. I know
or
you like
admit
the blood.
well, beyond that, I do need to reveal that I was obviously too young to be working on this movie because I was a toddler when it came out. But when I worked in film for a few years, I remember getting a call to come in for a job interview for an art department on a TV pilot for this terrible TV show that we actually never made.
Oh,
We
okay.
produced a pilot and then the network immediately was like, garbage, no, which they do a lot. Like this happens every spring. So I get the call to go interview to be an art department coordinator. And they said, you're going to be interviewing with Les Dilly. And I was like, all right, quick, Google this person because I need to know who I'm interviewing with. And as I looked him up, he was Oscar winner, Star
Oh wow.
Wars, Oscar
Oh,
winner,
nice.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think nominated for The Abyss, nominated for Empire Strikes
Okay.
Back. There was like a fifth one in there. Like
A little
designed our
intimidating.
childhoods.
He
And
did design our childhood.
so at
Yeah.
that point, I'm pumped. I'm like, I'm going in to interview. I don't even care if I get the job. I just want to meet this guy. Like
Yeah.
all the artwork we saw in this movie, he was the art director for it. The ball, iconic ball that Indy's running away from in the temple.
Super
Like
iconic. Yeah.
he's got his hands on that, like the Death Star.
Yeah.
He built that essentially. So like
Amazing.
he actually ended up hiring me. He's like the nicest guy ever. So I definitely have a very soft spot for the art direction in this movie because I worked with Les Dilly and he was just such a fantastic guy.
Well, we'll
Stupid
go
TV
easy on
concept.
maybe we'll have to go easy on the art in this movie.
I mean, the art is really cool in this movie. Like right from the get-go, you're going into the temple, there's skeletons, there's cobwebs. That's all the art director's hands on that and the production designer. Like it's cool. It looks super cool in this movie.
It does. Okay, my hands have relaxed off the pearls. That aside, my kids were engaged and I too was engaged. It was good. Like you're in the scene, it's bloody and there's some problematic elements, but
Yes.
it's really engaging. And yeah, the ball rolling down. I mean, my kids loved that. I mean, especially
Yeah.
my son. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of what made this movie so iconic that everyone latched onto it, is it just took you into all these places that you'd never really seen before and made it seem so adventurous and so out of our day-to-day life. I have never been chased by a giant ball through a temple and I have to
No, I
slide
have
under the
not.
door before it shuts and traps me in there forever. Like that's whoa, those are some stakes. What a cool way to do it. So
Yeah. And I'd say I just to go into the characters now, because Harrison Ford too, he is still really good in this role. He wasn't stale. Just in this, honestly, the same way that Han Solo is not stale either.
yeah.
He's not stale in it. He's still really he's great. I thought he was engaging again. My kids did. Like
Yeah.
he's good
I
still.
mean, and they give him such a cool intro. We're going through the jungle and you just see his shadow being cast with
It was
the shadow of the
cool.
hat, and like the
Yeah.
first thing you see of him is the hat, the whip, the gun, but like you don't see his face, so it's very mysterious.
Yeah.
And like then they're going through and they're like jumping over things and they're like pushing their way through vines, and so he doesn't even like say anything before you get all this kind of
Yeah.
watch this person adventure their way into a temple and nearly get killed
While trying to steal some
while
artifacts
trying to
though, to
steal
be honest.
antiquities from some British museum. But we
That's
don't know
all.
that. We don't know that yet.
We don't know that yet. Yeah. And it's like action packed from the start. I have like I guess a nostalgia for the action packed and the hero that's not he's not ripped, he's not like
Yeah.
super buff.
He's a
He's
college professor
yeah,
who like
he's not
moonlights as a stealer and
as a
dealer of antiquities.
guilty of manslaughter in a lot of countries. So what else about Harrison Ford? We know that he had a cool intro. He's super cool. He's not too buff. What else did you like or maybe didn't like about him? But I doubt you didn't like things.
Um, No, I think they intentionally made his character problematic, which is where they worked that whole Marion Ravenwood line in there,
Good
which
point.
has always bothered me. But just reading in advance of this episode, I think it was Steven Spielberg was just talking about like, we don't want him to be the perfect hero. Like, this is a flawed human, and he has a few skeletons in his own closet, and that we're just watching him navigate these situations and trying to humanize him in that way by giving him kind of some weird, gross things in his history. But okay, even just his reaction, he thinks Marion has died, and his response to that is, I'm going to drink several bottles of whiskey and then have a
Right.
meeting with the Nazis. Yeah, not a good response. His therapist probably would not approve of that behavior. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's like, I guess he's not like super suave. I still enjoyed the whole like "I love you" written on the eyelids of one of his students.
I always found that super weird. Like even he kind of blinks at that, like, what the fuck? Like,
Great, but I like that
what
he's
is the
flustered
student?
by it.
Yes, he is flustered. Like,
Yeah, so there's a little bit of that.
don't hook up with the students, even if they have I love you written on their eyelids, those creepy, creepy students.
Yeah,
And his
yeah.
class is like two guys and all women are the rest of the class.
Right.
He's teaching.
And if you think about that, if it's one made in 1981 and two set in 1936, yeah, I guess that says something.
Yeah.
That they're just there for the beefy professor, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
I care.
Other things about him though, like he is resourceful even when he doesn't know what he's doing. Like he just wings it in a sort of the correct direction
He
sometimes.
sort of wings it in like a curmudgeon way, which I kind of
Yeah.
appreciated.
Yeah, he gets definitely a little grumpy about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, like Harrison Ford in the character of Indiana Jones, it's still good. We could talk about the problematic parts from the perspective
Yeah.
of 2023, but it's still good. The one thing that I kept, like, he's like the worst archaeologist in the world, I feel like. I mean, he's like smashing through walls.
He's Kool-Aid Manning his way out of an
Yeah,
Egyptian.
he's like really digging through things and crunching bones and like precious objects. He's just a little shitty at that part of the job. But I guess if you're just gonna sell that shit to the British Museum, who cares? I
Yeah,
don't
they
know.
can like super glue the cracks back together. He is educated though. Like he can read hieroglyphics and he can read different languages. He's got the professor part of it down. He's just not very good at the excavating part of it.
Yeah, and I guess I know that's not the point of this movie. And I should disclose, my wife works for the NMAI, the National Museum of the American Indian. And, she herself is an American Indian, but there's so much stuff out there now about the
Antiquities
returning.
that were stolen from the entire
Yeah,
world.
you can't help but have that worm your way into your head when you're watching it, even though that's like not really the point.
No, but it's so much more like we have such a better awareness now of all the level of things that were taken from all over the world
Right.
by the United States, by the British. We are not properly reconciling that yet. And this movie is definitely not reconciling anything. Like he's casually dealing antiquities after class in that one scene.
I know.
Like, oh, hey, I got a couple of things in my pocket here. Oh, those look valuable. Yeah, I'll get you some for that. Like, they're
Yeah,
just
and it's also
casually
like
chatting.
the guy who I guess is his vague boss with his like martini. Of course, the museum will buy it. Like, whatever.
Yeah,
It's
just
like a
oh,
little.
this is 10,000 years old, and I just found it in like the middle of an Incan temple. Eh,
Whatevs. Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. I might have
Look
crashed
good?
through a wall to get it and killed a bunch of people, but that's okay. It's part of the job. Yeah. So let's get to some of the other characters that are here. I mean, Indiana Jones is the most memorable, but
Yes.
who should we start with?
So he has a nemesis, which that makes a really good hero too. Like he's got his bad guy French archaeologist that he is constantly competing for. This character is Rene Belloc, who is standing waiting outside the temple when they go into the Incans, and he does that iconic swapping of the gold statue with the bag of sand and like
Yeah.
risks his life getting out of there, and just Belloc is standing there with a bunch of guys and guns and spears and everything pointed at him, like, give me that. Thank you. Good day, sir. And
And he's also like dressed in all white. Balak is like he's just exactly who you would think of as some sort of asshole from the British Museum stealing antiquities. Like he fits the part.
but he's doing it on behalf of, I don't know, the Parthenon or whatever in Paris. Like,
Whatever it is. Yeah.
so Belloc is kind of I like him as a villain. Like he's a fun villain
Yeah. He's
because
definitely an easy villain to not like, but he's not gross.
he's not gross, and
Well, sometimes.
I mean, his grossness is like his moral standings, but like he'll sit down and have a drink with Indiana and give him this lecture on like, we're all gonna sell out one day, and Indiana's like, I won't, and it's like, I don't know, you might have already.
Yeah, and I mean, Bellic is also like sort of in the employ of the Nazis at this point, and so he sort of tries to make a play of I'm doing this for the knowledge, but he's
Yeah,
still doing it with the Nazis. So there's a little bit,
he's totally, yeah, he's turned on what will be his country versus the country attacking them in the next few
right,
years,
right.
although it's only 1936 here, so he can pretend he doesn't know what's about to happen. So he doesn't have any loyalty to anyone. But that said, at one point, the Nazis have kidnapped Marion, brought her to Belloc, and I feel like he actually treats her better than Indiana does.
Yeah, he kind of does, but he's like a little gross because
He's very creepy. Yeah.
yeah, for some reason, with his prisoner, he unties her, but then he's like, "Here, put on this like sexy white dress and heels." I was like, "Shut the fuck up, man! Come on!"
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe he's just being
Like,
French.
who
No,
brings
I'm just
like a
kidding.
dress a hostage? Who brings a hostage a dress? Like, that's so silly.
I feel like Balak is very predictably chaotic, if that could be a thing. Like,
Yeah,
why he's doing what he's doing, and he's not necessarily doing things for evil reasons. He's just doing the whole ends justify the means thing by partnering with the Nazis.
right.
So yeah, you can like follow his reasoning to why he's doing things, and at the end, he's genuinely trying to see what's in the ark.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really remember him that well. Like when he came on screen right at the beginning scene in the jungle when he basically takes what Indiana Jones just worked to steal or worked to extract, whatever we want to call it.
Mhm.
I was like, oh yeah, this guy. In my
Yeah.
head, the villains were the Nazis in this movie, and I totally forgot that there's this other guy. He's not as villainy as a Nazi, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's bad guys in this movie.
There are bad or bad
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
But
He's like a
he
gentleman bad
yeah,
guy.
a polite
Yeah.
bad guy.
He's like, pinkies up bad guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. His
Yeah.
family has a chateau with a vineyard, and he's happy to share
Totally.
the bottle of it with Marion.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I think that's actually part of the plot, right?
Yeah,
It
the very
is.
fancy elite villain.
All right. So let's get back to Marion then. Karen Allen. I know you love this character. I did too. So,
This is one of my all-time favorite characters in any movie ever.
oh,
I
what? Better
love
than Wednesday
Marion
Adams?
Raven.
I don't
Well,
know.
so I would say that if teenage me really gravitated towards Wednesday Adams as being awesome, I think 20-something me thought Marion Ravenwood was the ideal kind of lady that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
She is tough. She's traveling all over the world. She has a superpower of drinking people under the table, which I
Yeah.
find fantastic. She can throw a punch. I mean,
Yeah.
she is so cool. So
She
I
is cool.
love Marion. They make her do a lot of stupid things in this movie. And yet I think Karen Allen is so good at being Marion Ravenwood that she gives this role the dignity that the script didn't. So I love
Right.
Marion Ravenwood. Everything about her is awesome.
I think she's awesome too. You have her character and you have the Princess Leia character roughly around the same time. And I think it was sort of the first movies that I had seen where the woman was really equally in it, giving it as much as she was getting it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to say she's equals to Harrison Ford or to Indiana Jones just because of the whole very clearly started a relationship when she was underage.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
she's independent. She could hold her own. She
she's
definitely fights.
running her
And
own
she's
pub
super
in the
cool.
Himalayas. She speaks Nepalese.
Yeah, no, she's super cool. I totally agree. I was excited to rewatch her in this, and she was
Yeah.
just as cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
she's got a great entrance too, because they like just zoom in on we're in this random pub in the Himalayas and it's candlelit and shadowy, and there's this whole group of people standing around, and there is a drinking contest going on, and she is drinking like this huge dude under the table. And then
Yeah, that was
proceeds
kind of fun.
we're assuming she's that drunk. She proceeds to go through the whole fight scene that happens in that
Right, and
pub
she's like loaded.
completely drunk.
Yeah.
And yeah, punches Indiana Jones in the face when he walks into the pub. Like,
Deserved.
yeah, no, he had it coming,
He did.
apparently. They don't give too much detail there, but she says, I was a child. You knew it was wrong.
I mean, I almost want to repeat that quote because I had forgotten about that part, and when I heard it, Elaine and I looked at each other like, "What? I don't remember
Oh,
this." We had to explain to my 6-year-old what drinking is really, like a drinking
ah,
contest, and that was kind of funny because,
oh,
obviously we have drinks in the house, but we're certainly not trying to drink people under the table in our household. So we're like, yeah,
is
so
he gonna
don't do
grow
this
up?
at home. Don't do this in college.
Is he gonna grow up thinking that that's what drinking is, the same way you thought the Ink and Paint Club from Who Framed Roger Rabbit was what drinking was?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. The Ink and Paint Club and Roger Rabbit. I'm like, oh, that's what drinking is.
Your son's
They
gonna
put
be
rocks
like,
in your
well,
bourbon.
when you turn 21, you go to the Himalayas and you sit down and you do a bunch of shots with Marion
And then
Ravenwood.
Nazis burst through the door and burn down the bar.
Oh my god. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
scene
that
is
was.
intense.
I personally got a kick out of watching my wife trying to explain what a drinking contest is to my 6-year-old because it's kind of funny. But that
Did
was
she
a
go through all
cool-
the different ones? Like, well, sometimes you have to flip the cup over. Sometimes you have a ping pong ball.
Not get to that. But it was a very cool entrance for her as a character.
Yeah.
I mean, the Nazis come in and torch her bar and she fights. And this is a little bit where, like you were saying, they're like shooting people's eyeballs and stuff.
Yeah.
But she's pretty awesome and
Her
still is.
funniest move during that entire fight, because she's a part of the fight. She's shooting people, she's throwing objects around. But there's one point she's crouched under the bar and she just reaches up for one of the kegs and pours the wine into her mouth and takes like a couple huge gulps
Yeah.
and then proceeds fighting some more. And I just thought she is funny. Like,
She is
Marion's a
funny.
great character. I feel like she falls into my pet peeve of they take the damsel in distress thing and put it on a character who's already proven she can fight. So they have this
Yeah.
scene in the market where there's a whole fight scene breaking out. She is sort of hitting a guy over the head with some frying pans, but like, she can do better than that, especially sober. Good God.
Good God. Yeah, no, there is, yeah, I guess
But
you're
then she
right.
goes running and decides to hide in some baskets, and then they just, like, pick her up in the basket and run off with her, and she's officially kidnapped, and that was always super lame to me. She would not do that. She was fighting, she was holding her own. Why is she hiding in a basket for
Yeah,
easy transport to the desert, where she then proceeds to drink Bullock under the table?
it's true. That's true. But I'd say there's like, it definitely falls into that pet peeve, but it feels less so
I
than,
think Karen Allen makes it feel like she's still holding herself up. Like, the way she's yelling for help is almost more annoyance than "Come rescue me."
right. Like, I gotta bust out of this basket.
Yeah, she's putting an edge on her voice where I am giving her some slack. She doesn't sound as flimsy as another actress might have made this, so
Yeah.
kudos to Karen Allen. I think she did a really good job with some stupid moments in this movie.
Yeah, I was saying at the beginning that I sometimes got confused between my memory of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade. I think now that we're even talking about it, and just now that I've obviously rewatched the movie, I don't remember who plays the female lead in The Last Crusade, but it doesn't even matter to me because Karen Allen is the one I remembered. I had forgotten that she wasn't in The Last Crusade because she just leaves such a strong impression. She's so good. And I think that later female love interests or whatever they are, or partners, are a little less interesting than she is.
Yeah.
So, you
But
know,
she's not coming in like she does have a crush on Indiana Jones from childhood, apparently.
gross. Yeah.
But it's not a "I'm so smitten and this is why I'm following you." Like, she sets the terms really clear when he shows up, leads the Nazis to her, and they burn down her bar. She's like, "You owe me $5,000. You're my goddamn partner until you pay
Yes,
that back."
that's true. Yeah,
So
she's a little bit like bitch better have my money kind of situation.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, and she's establishing, like, "I'm your equal, you're not getting rid of me until you pay me back," and
Right.
I appreciate that.
That's true. So what are some of the other, so Sala?
So,
Can you
Sala
remind people who Sala is? Because I had completely
yes,
forgot about that character.
I remembered him, but I forgot who was playing him, and I'll take a dive into that in a second. Sala, he seems to own a company that does excavating in Egypt, so he is Egypt-based. He's Indy's man on the ground there, like, picks him up at the airport, the whole 9 yards kinda thing. They're good friends, and Salah's super resourceful. He knows how to navigate the fact that the Nazis are digging for Egyptian treasure and, like,
Yeah, and what
plays
might be wrong with it. He helps figure out why they might have the wrong digging site, all that stuff.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he's the one who saves Indiana from the bad dates, as he calls it, when,
Oh,
like
that's right.
yeah, there's a scene
Poor
where
rest in
somebody
peace, monkey.
the little Nazi monkey
I know.
I did have a note about that because they leave that little monkey body sprawled out on the little
I
carpet
know. I
there,
was
and
a
it looks
little
so
worried my
sad.
kids were gonna like get so upset about that,
But
but
you saw they taught the monkey to heil, and
that's true. That's
there's a
true.
little
Yeah, my
monkey
kids
heil, and
didn't
you're just like,
care as much.
"Oh god, it's a Nazi monkey."
It's a Nazi monkey, even though it's cute. I just love John Rhys Davies. He's Gimli from Lord of
He's
the
great.
Rings.
Yeah, so he plays Gimli in Lord of the Rings. One thing that occurred to me now watching this as an adult that never occurred to me before. I generally don't have issues with actors playing different nationalities,
Yeah.
but this one is a little bit sticky for me because John Rhys Davies, who is phenomenal in this role, he's such a good actor, but he grew up in Africa. He's Welsh, but his dad
Oh, I
brought
didn't know that.
family to move there to be a colonial police officer.
Oh, really? Oh,
And
interesting. Did
so
not know
that just
that.
adds a weird layer of, okay, he's very good at playing an Egyptian, but he's not African, and he actually grew up in the family of enforcers of colonization in Africa. And
Yeah.
really don't want to make too much of it, but like it's there. And
Well, I
like
mean,
that
it's there
sticks
if
with
you
me
know it.
more
I mean,
than yeah.
I'd say
I
like
don't
for
know.
for me, I kind of sometimes I feel like the foreign accents that in some older movies are just sort of lame. But That being said, he's a pretty good sidekick character. Like
He's
I
great. Yeah, Sal's
he's really
a
great.
great character,
Yeah.
and he's coming back in this 5th movie they're making,
Oh, he
apparently.
is? Oh,
Oh, yeah.
excellent.
Get
It's like we're
ready.
a big promo for that movie. Yeah.
So Sal is a really cool character. I'm gonna separate the history of John Rhys Davis's family in Africa from him playing this role.
Yeah, he's super charming. And he helps Indiana Jones. There's a scene where Indiana Jones is basically rappelling down in a rope to a weirdly pristine archaeological find from 2000 years ago, which is in and of itself is slightly ridiculous.
It had a
But
little sand on it.
yeah, right. So it's
Dust
like
that
just
off.
there, he's helping him and he's helping cover for him and he ultimately helps him escape. He definitely has a good role to play and he's not just a sidekick. Like he's definitely entertaining. I
Yeah.
enjoyed him in this a lot. I didn't even know any of like his history or anything.
I didn't know until I was prepping for this episode, and I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could read that, and I
Oh no, you
could read
can't.
all of his,
You
like,
can't.
support of Brexit and all sorts of things," but no, we're separating the actor from the
Separating it.
part.
Yeah, it's fine. But in 1981, I just don't think that was
Oh,
something.
no, they weren't thinking about that at all.
Yeah, not at all.
There's, like, one character representing all the Nazis, and he is the creepiest looking dude.
Fucking creep.
My German is non-existent, but his title is Sturmbannführer
Which is
Arnold
just sort of like
Ernst Koch.
sounds funny. For folks who don't remember, he's like the weirdo with the round glasses who always wears a black trench coat and
Can picture his face melting off if you've seen this movie, like, that's
yes,
all I
that's the
remember. This
guy.
guy is his face liquefies and melts
Face
off.
liquefies. If I remembered nothing else from my childhood, it was this fucking guy's melting face.
Yeah,
But
it was scary.
but he's the guy, he's the creep that gets called in to do the dirty work. He's the dirty work Nazi guy to torture
Yeah.
people.
There's, like, the good cop, bad cop. There's, like, I hesitate to say good Nazi, but, like, this is the bad Nazi.
This is the bad.
They
No,
brought
oh
the
my
bad
God, that's
Nazi.
hilarious. If Balak is the good Nazi, but he's actually British, like this guy, like this is the
Belloc's
guy I
French.
remembered.
Belloc's a French dude.
Oh, that's right, he's French, but he seems so British. But
He
this
does.
guy, this fucking guy, that's who I remembered as the villain. Like I remembered him. My daughter's just like, oh my God, like in her own 11-year-old way, was like this fucking guy. She's learning about Nazis and stuff in school and was horrified at this.
This is a good representation of, like, how
Yeah,
like,
no,
when
she
you're
was
reading
pretty
about
horrified.
Nazis, picture this guy at his melting face, and
Yeah, yeah.
like, every little thing he does, there's a scene where he enters the tent and pulls out this device that you're like, "Oh my God, is he gonna torture Marion with that?" And no, he, like, folds it into, like, a transformer coat hanger, and
Yeah.
it's just like, "Why are you so
Yeah, but you
weird?"
assume that it's gonna be fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've already seen he does torture people in that bar brawl in Nepal. Like, he went and got a hot poker out of the fire and held it to Marion's face, like, "Oh, I'm gonna just for fun torture you and try to get a little information here." He does have the one slapsticky moment, I thought, in this movie. In Nepal, he's reaching for the staff head, I think they're calling it. It's basically like this gold plated medallion that has directions on where to find the Ark of the Covenant. He reaches for it, but it's been in the fire and it's boiling hot. And he burns his hand on it and then runs outside like Joe Pesci in Home Alone. Like,
Yes, I totally thought about Home Alone in this part. Yeah.
sticks his hand in the snow, just and like the steam, the whole thing. It was so Home Alone-ish and stupid.
Yeah.
But you do see it later though, because he comes into a scene and goes Heil and holds his hand out, and oh, it's like gnarly scar tissue disgustingness.
The hot poker thing, that's the moment where at that point in the bar scene, they're like fucking shooting people, eyeballs
Yeah.
are exploding, and he has the hot poker to Marion's face. And I was like, what the fuck is this movie rated? I was like, what the? Like,
Yeah, only PG, but he's
yeah,
about
it
to
just was a little,
burn a
yeah,
lady.
so it was like, oh my God, this is like dead fucking serious.
Indiana Jones leads him right to Marion
Yeah.
in search of this medallion thing. Moments like that where it's just like, wow, Indiana's really screwing up this woman's life. Like, every move
know.
he makes, she's gonna get her business burned down. She's gonna get kidnapped. Like, she's facing all the repercussions of stupid things that he's doing. And
Yeah. He doesn't seem
ugh,
stupid though while he's doing it, but yeah, he fucks up some shit. Yeah.
he does, and she's the one who pays for it over and over again, which is why I'm not saying Balak is a good guy by any means, but I think she's generally safer with him because he doesn't do reckless things. He's not giving her over to the Nazis. He's feeding her, like,
Even he's like
even
being
with the
a creep and like
yeah,
giving her a white dress. Like
yeah,
that's what he's doing. And he's like, put on this sexy dress and I'm gonna creepily watch you in the mirror. And I
yeah.
was like, ew, gross. But Indiana Jones is like, here, I'm gonna throw you into this pit of snakes, and then whoopsies, we got caught and now we're stuck here.
Well,
So yeah, I'd say
even
that
before
he's
that,
decidedly not safe with Indiana Jones.
Indiana finds her in the tent. Oh, I could bring you back with me, but wait, they'd realize I was here. So you just stay kidnapped for a while. I'm just gonna leave you here.
I mean, that was kind of fun. It was still funny, like 40 years later. I thought that was kind of a
It's a
funny
little
moment.
funny.
Yeah. We could talk about plot holes or we could talk about awesomeness. So dealer's choice.
We gotta do both.
Yeah,
let's do bad news first. Let's talk
bad
plot
news
holes.
first.
Yeah.
First of all, it's my kids don't care about plot holes. So there's that.
Huh.
And I don't think kids generally did. And I don't think we did when we were kids watching this movie, or teens, whatever we were. But there's a lot of plot holes. It's like, and
What
I
did
feel
you
like,
notice? Like, let's list a few.
we'll list a few, but then the general question is whether we care, like it might not matter. I mean, one thing is that they basically figure out that the Nazis are digging in the wrong spot. They collectively figure out the right spot, which is like literally a fucking stone's throw from where the Nazis are. And then they just start fucking digging like right in front of the Nazis. And it is such a plot hole to me because they're just right there. And it's like, of course you're going to get caught. You're right fucking there.
Yeah, and then they got caught.
And
Like
then they got
Marion
caught.
she, despite the threats of torture and despite how drunk she gets hanging out with Balak, she doesn't give anything away. And then Balak just steps out of the tent, looks up the hill, sees the like silhouettes of them digging, and goes, "Oh, there they are."
I was like, oh my God, they're so blatant right there. Like, of course they're
Yeah.
going to get caught.
That's not very intelligent at all. Like,
Yeah, I mean, all the archaeological sites are in like pristine condition. Like, there's barely dust on them. I don't know why that bothered me, but it did. I think, oh man, we are fucking heathens. But the biggest plot hole to me is that God's wrath was real and saved them in the end. I mean, to me, that was like such a plot hole. I know that's not a plot hole to others, but
I don't have the
just
religious authority to speak on that one.
I know. I mean, the weird thing is like, so I did remember that this is how the movie ended. I totally knew it was coming. But for those who don't remember, so basically like the jig is up, everyone's caught. At this point, they'd escaped the snake pit area in the right place. The Nazis have the Ark. They're going to open it. Indiana Jones tells Marion to close her eyes when the Ark is opened. And like a mix of ghosts and dementors come flying out of the fucking Ark and just melt people's faces. It felt like a weird cop out. Whether you're a believer or not, the whole God is real thing being the thing that saves the day was like weird to me. I'm such a heathen.
It does actually raise some interesting questions about Indiana Jones in the beginning when they come to him and say, "Hey, we think the Nazis are digging for this Ark of the Covenant, and like give us some background on this." The way he explains it, and he's got the world's biggest book to flip open on exactly the right page to explain it, but he actually seems very cynical about religion. Like he's not buying it himself, even though he's studied what all the myths are. And I thought that was kind of a not weird, but like an interesting take. If you have this professor in the 1930s who's digging up religious artifacts left and right, and like he's kind of presented as agnostic, but the second it starts happening at the end, he knows exactly what to do, and he doesn't seem fazed that this all turned out to be real. So I think you're right. Yeah. There's a plot hole there.
Yeah, I guess there's a plot hole. And I guess like, again, as a kid, it doesn't bother me so much. And it sort of makes sense. Like, yes, God's wrath melts a bunch of Nazi faces and they deserve it. So that's great. So that's fine. But it was just, I guess it felt like the easy way out. Like, we're just going to throw God's wrath in here to end it. I mean, that's
a little
not
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
You know what I gotta say though? Oh, that was a good melted face.
It was a good melted face.
That looks so cool.
It did look cool. And like CGI could not make a melting face look that cool. It was pretty cool.
Oh my God. Like blood and like pus, it's just pouring out of his eye sockets and then all the way down. Oh, and like under his glasses, very visceral.
It is. I mean, I guess the question is like, do we care? Does it matter? Like, what do you think?
I think at this point, so many ridiculous things have happened in this movie. We've just been along quite a ride, and for it to end with people's faces melting off it's kind of a fitting ending in my point of view. Like,
Yeah.
you know what? Melt them all.
Melt 'em all. Yeah. I mean, I guess another fun it's not a plot hole, but I guess I thought it was a funny end, just going with the Ark of Covenant. At the end of the day, obviously the Nazis don't get the Ark and they get the Ark and they hand it over to essentially the US government. Then at the very end, you have this old dude wheeling a box in what looks like the biggest Amazon warehouse of all time and just storing it. And like the Ark is now just cataloged somewhere in the CIA's warehouse.
I love that
You love
so
that.
much.
Okay.
It's the
I mean, it was
perfect
funny.
ending. I feel like the entire show, The X-Files, sprung out of that moment.
Yeah, that's true. That's
That
true. It's pretty cool. Cause then you wonder
if
what else is in those
Yeah,
boxes.
because if you just anonymously have a crate with the Ark of the Covenant somewhere in that warehouse, what's in all those other boxes? And it's not
Yeah.
just a Amazon warehouse. I mean, this thing goes on for you can't even see the end of it.
I did watch, as we've discussed and will at a later time, the Crystal Skull. And the opening scene of the 2008 Indiana Jones movie basically takes place in that warehouse. And the Ark, you see it. Like for just a split second, there's some explosion, a box kind of rips open, and you can see part of the Ark. I mean, as soon as they went into that facility in the 2008 movie, I was like, oh my God, this is where the Ark is. This is the last scene from
We
Raiders.
can we can talk about why Crystal's got some issues, but like you can't show us what's in any of those other boxes. Come on, Crystal Skull.
Well,
I'm
I
gonna
thought it was a
like
fun
Christmas
wink and a
morning,
nod.
open them all. I want to see
Open them all.
everything. What's in
Yeah.
here?
So I mean, I agree with it's not a plot hole. I thought it was kind of even you could think of it as a letdown end or a funny end or just kind of amazing. It certainly allows them to set up for sequels for this to do
Yeah,
that.
I thought that was such a great way to end it. Indiana's been stealing some statues, but my God, what has the government been stealing and hiding
Right.
in this
Yeah. It makes the
warehouse?
world a little bigger. Didn't mean to steal that thunder, but what else is awesome in this movie? We've talked a
Well,
lot about the pearl clutchy stuff because I'm being like, for some
yeah,
reason, pearl
we're
clutchy.
not trying to be glass half empty about Indiana Jones. There's a
Yeah.
lot,
Fill it
lot of
up
great
for me,
stuff
Amanda.
here. We've talked about how cool the art direction is. I think just going from that first temple where like you have the boulder chase and all the skeletons that have been speared through and the pits and this like the tarantula gag and like all that stuff, like it's fun to look at.
It
It's
is.
a
It's so
cool
awesome.
environment. You jump from there to the Himalayas, you jump from there to Cairo, and you're in these Medina like marketplaces and running through these narrow streets and around the corners. And yeah, they're giving you such a cool atmosphere to work in. Even
Yeah.
like they're in like Egyptian pyramids and breaking out of the side of one at one point. Like you didn't like the whole Kool-Aid Man style, but
Right, because he's the worst archaeologist ever. Yeah, and I was afraid it was gonna look chintzy, but it didn't. I mean, it didn't need the CGI. The scene was set and was still really cool.
so many cool action sequences. So the big one is when Indy grabs his horse and chases down the truck that has the Ark of the Covenant on it. And it's just like one guy on a horse, but there are cars flipping off of cliffs and there's motorcycles skidding all over the place. And oh my God, the Wilhelm screams like, ah, like all over
Yeah.
the place. So amazing. And like he's jumping onto the truck and like they're on top of the truck, they're under the truck. Then like those are all real stunts and they look like real stunts. You know,
Yeah, they look great. I mean,
they're not
I
faking
mean,
any of that. It's so cool looking.
it is cool looking. It's normally not like my thing. It's not something I'm always like care about or super impressed with. I'm not a big action movie person, but it's still really good. And I think sometimes it's really good because Indiana Jones, again, he's not the buffest. He's supposed to be a professor. So his like ingenuity MacGyver like way to be that just made me sound so old. But like his way of being an action star, I think made those cooler in a way.
Yeah. No, I mean, they got him, like, hanging off the front of a Mercedes truck, like, bending the decal back, and, like, they're about to crush him between the car, and he drops under the truck and lets himself be dragged all the way to the back of the
Yeah,
truck, and then
that's pretty
climbs back out.
cool.
He's back on the truck again. Like,
My
they just
son
look
was
so
very
cool.
impressed with that scene with the
Yeah.
car. He was very excited about Indiana Jones going under the car. I mean, it's so I guess that's to say that it still works. It doesn't
Yeah.
come across as cheesy or chintzy. It's still good.
Yeah. It's awesome. Awesome.
What else is awesome?
There's little things in there that, like, I think are just, like, filmmakers nerding out. It's Spielberg, he's nerding out. The moment where they're digging up the Ark of the Covenant, the sky and like the way they're filming that, it suddenly looks like that movie, The 10 Commandments. And that jumped out at me this
Yeah,
time watching it.
no, that's cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Film nerdy
Cool stuff.
stuff. Indiana Jones shooting that swordsman. That's like so iconic and it's
I
funny.
know.
It's
I
still
didn't
funny.
like that as an adult. I didn't. I get it that it's iconic and it's supposed to be funny. It just I was like, oh God, like casual murder here. Like
You know what I read? So apparently Harrison Ford got like dysentery while he was working on this on location.
yeah,
And that scene, he was actually supposed to have a sword fight with the guy. But
yeah.
on the day of, Harrison Ford could barely move, so, like, they just re-scripted it really quickly, like, just shoot him, just see what
It's
happens."
actually kind of
And that's
funny.
what it was, and, like, it looks so funny.
It does look funny. Yeah. I'm
So
gonna hold
violent,
on to my pearls on that
yeah,
one.
it's a diarrhea-driven gag right
It's
there.
okay. Well, acceptable then. If it's,
Yeah, there you go.
I guess it's fine. We haven't talked about the actual snake pit yet. I was kind of like, oh, is this going to be gross again? Because I remember it being like terrifying when I watched this as a kid.
Yeah.
It's still really well done. I'm like, how the
Oh,
fuck did
yeah.
they film that? And I do think it's one of those scenes, I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon here, where if you were to just make this movie today, it wouldn't seem as gross in today's world of like the CGI and all the effects.
It would look like snakes on a plane, and those don't look like real snakes on a plane.
Yeah, there's something so fucking real about it. Heebie fucking jeebies
The
on.
one that I forgot about until I saw it was they're trying to get out of the pyramid, and they're going through the dark, and there's a corpse, and a giant snake just comes
Oh,
out of its mouth, and I was like, "Oh, ew, 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 ew,
yeah,
ew, ew." I remember that now, but,
yeah,
oh, so gross.
I remember
Like,
that was there, and I knew that my wife hadn't remembered
oh,
that, and I was
God,
like,
that's
I'm like,
queasy.
I know that's coming, and it was
Ugh,
like, oh, gross. I'm
and
getting the
they're
creeps
real
just talking
snakes.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I kind of like that like Indiana Jones is afraid of snakes. I mean, they totally set that
yeah,
up and they play that in the other movies as well. And yeah, that's just sort of like makes him not the tough guy, which makes it kind of fun. But
yeah,
that scene is still really good. Despite the whole we're grave robbing here and I'm the worst archaeologist ever and I was really dumb to dig right in front of the fucking Nazis situation. You
yeah.
put all that aside, it's still a good scene and it's still realistic. No,
Despite the antiquities wrapping.
despite. And to just go slightly into the cringy, I have like a pretty big list of the cringy, but two things come to mind. One, there's this throwaway line when Marion is in the basket and she's being carted away and kidnapped, and she just
Know what
yells
you're about
out,
to say.
You can't
"You
do
can't
this to
do
me.
this
I'm
to
an
me. I'm
American.
an American."
Oh,
Ugh.
I'm like, oh my God, that's fucking gross. But it's kind of throwaway. I don't even remember that line from when I was younger, but it was a
I feel
little bit
like
like, oh, record scratch cringe to me. And the other
it's a
thing,
terrible line, though. A
it is a
terrible
terrible
line.
line. It is funny ultimately when Indiana Jones rescues Marion and then unrescues her and ties her back up. But when he rescues her, he just grabs her face into a kiss. And it just reminded me of Adrian Brody kissing Halle Berry in the Oscars. And I was like, all right, Harrison. I mean, you're sure she's of age now? I mean, I don't know. There's just like slightly
Oh,
cringy things there. I feel like
yeah.
I'm such a Debbie Downer on the cringe right now.
Yeah.
The movie's still awesome, people, but
It
cringy. You don't need the casual murder. It could still be a good movie.
I don't know, the casual murder is kind of a selling point for me. Just
Clearly,
kidding.
you're like, I like the blood. As long as it's Nazi blood, it's fine.
The final cringy thing for me, I think for Indiana, his like growth in this movie is supposed to be like he wasn't taking Marion serious, but that he goes from not taking Marion seriously to, not rescuing her when he has the chance to at the end, he shows up. What is that? He's got like a bazooka. He's pointing at the ark and he's like, I just want the girl. And for her, she's finally happy because that's the acknowledgement she's been waiting for that he actually does like her. Balak basically calls his bluff and is like, go ahead, blow it up. Let's see what happens. And he doesn't do it.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't do it.
It's just
Yeah.
like, oh man, this was supposed to be about you finally like finding that people are more important than the things you're stealing. But he can't do it at the end, and that annoyed me.
Yeah, you're right. It's funny because I had noted that as like, oh, come on. But then because of the sea of other cringe, didn't even register as the top cringe.
It gets lost pretty quickly because then you're in the ceremony, and then Bullock's head explodes, and the Nazi's face melts off, and,
Right.
like, those are bigger
Everyone
takeaways.
melts.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
bigger
God is
takeaways.
real. God is real. I will say I do think everything's like kind of equal in that there's equal part cringe to awesome in my mind. Like
Yeah.
maybe there's a little bit more awesome. If you're going into this movie having not seen it in a long time, I would imagine that that's sort of the takeaway. I mean, that was my takeaway is that it kind of went downhill for me from downhill in that I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then everything just sort of like built and I was like, wow, there's a lot of cringe. There's a lot of murder. And it
Yeah.
kind of started to slide downhill, but I'd say they're sort of in equal parts. I mean, I think they're roughly equal. I don't know.
What did your kids think at the end? Were they excited about Indiana Jones, confused, creeped
So
out because the guy's face melted off?
right. So my kids were really engaged for most of the movie. My daughter, the violence eventually, she just sort of like lost interest and didn't actually see the end.
Oh, wow.
She was engaged to a point, and then it got. I think it wasn't the blood. The fight scenes just lasted too long for her. Like she just is
Mm.
like lost interest. The thing you noticed about the wrestler Nazi guy
The
that just
giant
fights
guy by the airplane.
by the airplane who gets like cut up by the propeller. That was the final straw for her. She was just sort of like, I don't want to watch 10 minutes of this that ends in a Nazi inside a propeller. She kind of lost interest, but she was really engaged up to that point. My son fucking loved it pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Engaged the whole way.
Yeah.
Not to gender this. I would love to hear from other kids though, like what they think, because my kids had very different reactions. But on the whole, I think they liked it.
We've just been, like, dunking on Indiana Jones.
We have been dunking on Indiana Jones. I almost feel bad, but the cringe to me is so noticeable that I just feel like you can't unsee it. It's just
Yeah.
there. And
All right,
and,
let's go to ratings.
let's go to the ratings. So just to remind people, we're going to now score. This is now our rating as adults rewatching this from 1 to 10. 1 is garbage, 10 is Princess Bride. What you got for me?
For adults, oh, this hurts me to say this, but I'm giving it a 6, which for
Okay.
me is low.
Yeah.
I still enjoy watching this, but I think there's a lot more awareness now that the Americans and the British stole so much stuff. Maybe this 5th movie, he's gonna put it all back. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
That's the whole plot.
Indiana Jones returns everything he stole.
Yeah. The thing is that the movie is still enjoyable. And the whole thing is like, do you want to watch it again? It is enjoyable, but it did just sort of slide downhill for me towards the end. Like the plot holes got more prevalent, the cringe just piled up. And so I landed on a 4 for a rating for an adult. I know it hurts me to say that a little bit because it's still good. I feel like Marion and the Indiana Jones character just were great. They're still great, but they don't carry it through to get above 50% for me. And what about for kids? So this is the part that, now we're going to rate based on what we think the intended audience. Does it still live up to the intended audience? Definitely kids, tweens. I mean, adults too. 1 being garbage, 10 being Princess Bride.
This one's
Kids
hard
today.
for me. Yeah, because I was not watching this one with kids. I don't know if this holds up or not for like modern children. I kind of want to give this a 6 for kids. I think it is still kind of fun and they're not going to be thinking as hard about it as we are.
So I also gave it a 6. I mean,
Okay.
kind of for those reasons. I thought it held up better, I think, for the target audience of kids than for adults. Because all the cringe and the violence, kids don't care about that as much. It's still fun. Things still are thrilling. Harrison Ford's still a good character. So, it's not enough for it to be at the top level, but it's enjoyable for them. So I also gave it a 6.
I've got my spreadsheet. So
You got your spreadsheet. What's the final? What's the score?
This has 22 points,
22.
which ties it with Who Framed Roger Rabbit and with The Dark Crystal.
Oh man, we might have.
Yeah.
We got to rescore some of these. But so what do you think? So ultimate question, regardless of score, does it live up? And we both have to agree.
I vote that this does live up barely.
Barely. Oh man, treat. I just don't. It's not there for me.
Ooh,
It does not. I know.
It takes one no to sink it. This does not live up.
It does not live up. I think that just misses the mark. Like you were saying, like it lives up barely for you, and to me, it barely didn't live up. Sorry. I maybe my
Oh.
hand is too clenched on the pearls. I don't know.
At some
Steven
point
Spielberg.
we may end up watching Temple of Doom, which we know is not going to live up. And
Oh, you're just gonna do that to get back at me.
I might, yeah. Revenge is called Temple of Doom.
Revenge. Oh no. Sorry for the fans of Raiders of the Lost Ark. We have deemed this part of the franchise as not living up, but I'd love to know if people disagree, think we're harsh, think we're clutching our pearls too much, that we should get over our cringe. Let us know at Live Up Pod on all the socials. I look forward to the hate mail.
Direct it all at Jess. Remember,
It's all my fault.
At Jess.
It's okay. You got hate mail for
The Dark
for
Crystal.
Troop Beverly Hills. So
And Troop Beverly Hills.
right. So it's okay. I could take it, guys. All right. Thanks, everybody. Till next time.